"We're here," my mom said to me and my brother as we woke up from the long car trip. "What time is it?" I asked. "It is 8 o'clock. It's just about time for me to go to bed." Mom looked tired, so I already knew she was going to go to sleep soon. "Can we stay up and explore the house?" my brother Derek asked. "I don't see any problem with that. Just be quiet, so we can get some sleep," my dad replied. For my winter vacation, my mom booked a stay in a gigantic log cabin-like mansion in the Colorado mountains. She didn't give us any details about the mansion because she wanted it to be a surprise. The location, the interior, everything about the place was kept a secret so they could see the excitement on our faces. We walked into the mansion, and the first thing I noticed was the second-story loft. It was huge, with a balcony to go with it. The loft continued to go around the corner of the house, leading to 2 hallways. One went towards the bedrooms and bathrooms. The other one went to a hole in the wall and a sauna. The hole was a water slide, water park-sized as well. "You want to try it?" I asked Derek. "Absolutely." Mom had told us to pack our swimming trunks, so we changed into them immediately. I let Derek go first and was waiting for a few minutes until he responded. "Jack, it's so cool down here," he yelled as I held onto the bar above the entrance and launched myself into the dimly lit neon slide. The slide was at least 5 feet wide, and it had a lot of twists and turns. Finally, I dropped into a big swimming pool. I could see that there was a set of stairs leading up to a different area to the left and a hot tub to the right. I looked around for Derek, but I couldn't find him anywhere. Started to walk up the stairs until the door opened slowly, with the light in the hallway shining through the crack. I peeked into the hallway until something touched my back. I was ready to turn around and fight until I realized it was Derek. "Where did you go?" asked him. "I went down the slide again." "Did you shut the door when you went out?" "Think so." "Then who opened the door?" "I have no idea. Maybe I didn't shut it, and the wind blew it open." I shrugged it off and went to the bathroom to rechange into my pajamas. The bathroom walls were covered in marble. It also had a big walk-in shower and a 6-foot tub. After I took a shower, I went to bed. My bedroom had a walk-in closet with an entrance to the attic. There was a desk with a lamp as well. I unpacked my journal and a few books that I probably wasn't going to touch with a number of things to do around there, and packed the rest of my clothes into the drawers. I picked up my journal and started to write. Day 1. We have made it to the vacation home. Took a nap in the car to save myself from having to stare out the window for 3 hours. So far the house looks nice. I still haven't checked out the bottom floor though and haven't explored outside yet. I'll probably do that tomorrow. One other thing. I'm pretty sure that when I was looking for Derek, the door at the top of the stairs opened by itself. Put down my journal and went to bed after only a few minutes. I woke up and saw that my clock said 5:06 a.m. I noticed that my door was slightly cracked open. I was positive that I closed it last night, so I got up and was about to close it until I heard a noise coming from downstairs. The main lights were still off in the main area of the house, but the TV was still on. I focused on the screen and saw that it was on the Weather Channel. There will be a slight snowstorm heading towards the mountains. Nothing to worry about, just be aware as we continue on this week, the meteorologist said. As I continued to watch the TV, I noticed there was a big black mass in the shape of a person laying on the couch. As I tried to make out what it is, a face appeared above the headrest. I immediately shut my door and locked it. You're seeing things. Go back to bed, told myself as I got back into bed. Light was shining into my room as I woke up again. The clock read 10:32 a.m. as I started to get up and put on my winter clothing so I could go outside. I first explored the first floor and saw that we had an island kitchen table. To the left was the hallway leading to the master bedroom and the game room. The game room had a pool table, a beanbag chair sitting in front of a widescreen TV with an Xbox below it. "Mom, I'm going to go outside," I yelled as I went into the living room. "Hawk, make sure you dress warm," she yelled back. I walked outside and explored a little around the sides of the house and found a hot tub on the left side and a little campfire spot on the right. I went back inside to see if Derek would like to come with me and explore the forest, but I saw that his door was shut, so I presumed that he was sleeping. I walked outside once again and saw a dense forest northwest of the mansion. The woods were covered head to toe with snow. I could see very easily since the trees were blocking out the sunlight, but as I kept walking, the trees were getting denser and denser with every step I took. "Don't get off track. Follow your footsteps when you're done," I told myself. I continued into the forest until I saw a pattern on the ground. As I got closer, I realized what it was. It was a fresh pair of footprints. They were adult-sized too. I followed them until I saw that they went around and stopped behind a tree. Quickly started to run as fast as my feet could take me. I continued to follow my footsteps until I made it out of the woods. I kept running though. The woods stayed the same, like I wasn't going anywhere. I should have been out of the woods minutes ago, I told myself, after what felt like an hour. Made it out. My parents were bringing extra food in at that moment. I saw footprints in the woods. I yelled at my parents. "Are you sure they were footprints?" my dad asked. "I'm pretty positive they were," answered. "They were probably some hunter. Don't worry about it," Mom replied. I went inside and took my warm clothes and put on my swimming trunks. Started to go to the pool room, but I stopped at Derek's room. His door was still shut, as well as his lights being turned off from what I could see. I continued my way to the pool room and sat in the hot tub. After a few minutes of spacing out, I grabbed my phone from the hot tub steps and started to write in my journal again. Day 2. I've begun to see things around here. Woke up this morning and saw something in the living room. That might have been my imagination, but the footprints in the woods were not. If anything else happens, I'll tell Mom and Dad about it, and hopefully we'll leave before the blizzard comes through. I got out of the hot tub, changed, and went to bed shortly after. "Jack," someone spoke to me in a deep voice as I woke up from my sleep. I looked to my door and saw Derek standing in front of it. "What do you want?" I asked. "You've been seeing things too, right?" he replied. "Yes, why?" answered. "I saw a man out on the hill. He was staring at me, I'm sure of it." "I saw footprints out in the woods," I replied. "What should we do?" he asked. "Wait and see what happens next," I answered as he left my room. I went to sleep shortly after. I woke up to my room being extremely cold. I got up and looked for Mom and Dad and found them in the kitchen. "What happened?" I asked. "The power went out a few hours ago. We are getting the frozen foods out of the freezer and putting them outside," Mom replied. I looked outside and saw the blizzard raging on. "We should try to go into town." I suggested the roads would be slick. "There's no way we'll be able to make it," Mom answered. "It doesn't mean we can't try," I replied. Mom grabbed the keys and we got in the car. We left Derek back at the mansion because we presumed he was still sleeping and would come back for him later if we got to town. Being outside and in the car, we could hear the blizzard winds pounding the glass. As we continued down the road, we thought we were going to be able to get down the mountain. But those plans were immediately up in flames when we somehow came back to the mansion. "What the heck?" Mom whispered. We went back inside, and I immediately went to Derek's room. I opened the door to find nothing. His covers were not made, as well as his belongings were still here. I searched the entire place and he was nowhere to be found. I sat in my room as day turned into darkness. We didn't have our phones turned on, so we could save our batteries and use them when we needed to. We sat in the living room with a fire going in the fireplace with wood that was placed there before we got there. It was silent until I spoke. "Where do you think Derek went?" I asked. "There's no way he would have disappeared. He's probably still around here somewhere," Mom replied. "Mom, I checked everywhere. He's not her." The conversation was stopped by 3 huge knocks at the front door. All 3 of us looked at each other, deciding on what to do. "I'll go check through the peephole," I answered and peeked through the hole. At first, I couldn't see anything, like something was covering the peephole, until a face suddenly came into view. I yelped and locked the door. "It's Derek. Please let me in. I'm cold and scared." Whoever was outside wasn't Derek. It had a voice like Derek's, only this voice was ungodly and horrific, like nails on a chalkboard times 10. Mom started walking to the door before I stopped her. "Jack, I need to let him in. Get out of my way." She began to sob. "That's not Derek. If you open that door, we are dead," I assured her until Dad pushed me out of the way and opened the door. What was standing outside was something I'd never be able to get out of my head. It was 6'5", its enormous arms almost touching the snow-covered ground. It grabbed Mom and Dad and ran to the forest I explored earlier in the week. I ran down the road because I knew it would come back for me. After running for what felt like forever, I stumbled upon a small cave and waited for the blizzard to pass. I am currently sitting in a Denver hotel room writing what I remember from that week. This was 20 years ago, and I've never gotten back to a normal mental state since then. I'm planning on going back to the mansion and search for answers, even if it means I'll die for them. Expect more if I do go back and survive. I'm old, 87 to be exact. I didn't know this existed until last Tuesday when my orderly sat down at my bedside and started scrolling. To be honest, I don't like it when they do that. They say everybody does it nowadays, but I think one should look another person in the eye when they're having a conversation. Anyway, I learned how to use a laptop a few years ago. I don't have any relatives, and since one need to be online these days to do anything at all, I decided to learn how to use a computer and how to be online. And now I'm about to die. They say it's cancer, but it doesn't matter. I'm old and I'm dying. Simple. I'm almost ready for it too. It's just that I have a story to tell and no one to tell it to. So I'll write it here if that's all right. When I was a young boy, I lived with my parents up in the north where my father worked at a sawmill, as his father did before him, and actually even his father before him. The winters were long, and if we got a lot of snow during the coldest months, we had trouble getting anywhere. One day my grandmother, Elisa, died, and of course it was during those cold months. We couldn't bury her at the cemetery since we couldn't get to the cemetery, and the ground frost made it impossible to bury her anywhere in the ground where we could get to. So we built a snow mausoleum and put her in it as a temporary solution. That was a mistake. I don't know what we should have done, but what we did was not right. In the night that followed, I woke up and the house was pitch black. Normally we had some candles and a few paraffin lamps so that we weren't completely in the dark. But now it was pitch black, and not only that, it was also dead silent. Not one snore, not one squeaking bed. That's when I heard the grunting noises from outside. Grunting noises in the wilderness is normal. It can be anything from a badger to a moose or a bear if you're unlucky. So I actually found the grunting noises comforting since I was inside. It meant that I wasn't dreaming or going insane. I was still in my parents' house in the woods, safe and sound. But what I should have known then, that I have realized later on, is that there is no animal that is in its rut during the winter, and both badgers and bears hibernate during these cold months. So it is very unusual to hear animal grunting noises in the winter. But I didn't think of that then. Since I felt that the grunting was not unusual, but rather interesting, I went downstairs to have a look. There I found the rest of my family standing in the living room looking out through the window. All of them dead silent and equally dead still. "What is happening?" I asked. Or rather, I tried to ask, but my father threw himself over me and gripped my entire jaw with his hands and covered my mouth. He looked me straight in the eyes with a stare that meant absolute panic. I looked at my mother that was still staring out the window, tears now running down her face. She did not make a sound. Everything was quiet. Even the grunting noises had stopped. My father, who saw that I understood the need to be quiet, let me go and raised himself up to look out the window. Did the same. It looked like a bear sitting in the spot where the mausoleum had stood. The building was completely ruined now, and in the midst of the remaining piles of snow it sat. But even though it was a clear night, it was hard to see any details because of the trees. One weird thing, though, was that it sat cross-legged. I could clearly see its knees poking out on both sides of it. It sat completely still, and it felt like it had its eyes fixed on us, like it was deciding what to do next. Then it got up and stood on its hind legs, and the moonlight hit its face. Everyone in the room held their breath. It looked like a bear, but it was smiling. I swear it was smiling. Not like an animal that you can see is happy. No, this was a real human-like smile. It was looking straight at us now, and I could feel vomit creeping up in my throat. My mother had started crying silently, and my dad held his arms around her in a way that looked like he was equally trying to comfort her and equally trying to muffle the little sound she made. The bear stood there for what felt like maybe 15 minutes, but was probably more like 3. Then it walked away, still on its hind legs. The next day my father and grandfather walked out to the burial site to see what was left of it. Us children were not allowed near it, but since my mother was quite upset, I could easily sneak away. I hid near the site behind a large rock and heard my father and grandfather talking. "What shall we tell the others? Look at the trails. The thing dragged her with it when it left." My grandfather said solemnly. My father said nothing for a while, and then he said, "This was a hungry bear who has woken up too early. There is nothing else for it to eat now, so it came here. We will tell them that and forbid them from going outside after sundown." My grandfather said nothing in response, but I could tell he didn't like what my father had said. They shoveled all the remaining snow from the mausoleum into a big pile. That pile remained there until spring, when it melted away. We had a proper funeral for Elisa, of course, but with an empty casket. They have always maintained that it was a bear, but I don't know. I know bears can sit cross-legged. I know they can walk on their hind legs. I know they can make funny faces, and I know they can grab things. Really don't know what I believe, but one thing I will say: beware of grunting noises in the winter. Whatever it was that night, it ate my grandmother's corpse. There is something not right about this winter. I can't say much about it, but I live in the Midwest. Honestly, that should tell you enough, because there isn't much to say. If you don't know what the Midwest is or haven't visited our vast amount of corn and soybean fields, count yourself lucky. There's nothing here, just miles of farmland, sporadically dotted with copses of trees. Of course, there's prairies, forest preserves, and a few national parks, and all that stuff, but the Midwest is the most boring stretch of land between mountain ranges that could ever exist. I've lived here my whole life, and honestly, the place is a nightmare. We have flash flooding in the spring, and a Category 3 tornado is one of those things that we kind of shrug at and say, well, it sucks, but at least it didn't happen to us. We get weird summers with sun that bakes the earth and makes asphalt give off heat waves that could engulf a person. Honestly, the fall is the most peaceful time we get here, where the leaves change colors and the air is crisp like apple skins and ripe with possibilities. But the real kicker is the winter. The winter is a crapshoot. It could be a nice 40 degrees one week, and then the next the high is -4 without wind chill. We can get no snow, and then suddenly a foot appears overnight. And it's not that fluffy powder snow you get in the mountains. This is heavy, dense lake effect snow that buries your car. Your driveway is ice, your house is ice, everything is ice, but you still have to drive to work because, hey, it's the Midwest. The winters have always been like this because, like I said, I've lived here in this seemingly godless place for my entire existence. I'm an expert on this stuff. Flooding like we need to build an ark, followed by baking in dry but also humid heat, followed by a few months of good weather, ending with the ominous phrase, winter is coming. We see you, Winterfell. We know what's going on. That being said though, there's something really freaking weird about this winter. I can't explain it to you. Maybe it was the late snowfall or the general shifting of the temperature, but something feels off. Something feels wrong. I've tried talking to my family about it, but it's more of the same. Oh, the weather is always like this. Oh, come on. It's just a weird year. But that's the thing. It's been an incredibly strange year. All the other seasons felt relatively mild, like there was some absence in definition. Spring, summer, and fall all blended into each other almost seamlessly. It's like the chaotic energy that kept the seasons apart and defined them was suddenly gone. Temperatures were stable and easygoing. I mean, we still had our rough days, but this year was almost a cakewalk compared to the past few. I can't even blame global warming because that's a gradual thing, as much as we can say that. This was so suddenly not irregular that it was alarming, and it seemed like nobody noticed. I mean, I noticed. Honestly don't know how to explain how bone-chillingly wrong winter has felt this year. The wind feels like something ancient passing over my town, whispering through trees and breathing between houses. There's a sense of dread that happens when the sun goes down, and for some reason the sky is still light gray. I know that's light pollution being reflected back from the clouds, but there is something so unnerving about seeing the sky light enough at 2 and you can see the shadows of naked tree branches against it. It's otherworldly, horrifying, and mystical all at the same time. Like I'm seeing something that I was never meant to know about. I feel like I'm trespassing on something much older and much worse than could be explained, and for some ungodly reason the night feels hungry. It feels ominous and awake in the exact way the rest of the year felt quiet. Of course, naturally nobody else really notices this because nobody else I know is an insomniac like me and is actually up at the witching hour to peer through the window to watch the street. The world is so utterly still that the alarms are beginning to ring in the back of my head, but it's also so still and quiet that I feel like I'm overreacting. That this is just me projecting life insecurities onto an unstable world climate. That this is just an exhausted 26-year-old dealing with living on their own for the first time and clutching at reasons for things to not feel right. And I told myself this every night for the last week. Up until last night at 3 a.m. when the frost started creeping down the street. Here's the thing. I know frost spreads out. I've seen it happen on my windshield pretty much every freaking year. That is not how this happened. It crawled down the street like mist with legs, slowly gaining ground. I watched it as it moved by on fingers of ice, pulling itself along like a centipede. It just kept going. It went down my street and creeped onto the sidewalk, claiming space and settling in. My breath fogged up the glass, and I looked on in horror as it slowly walked its way up my window. Normal frost spreads in veins or fractals, but this was something else. When it touched the glass, it spread and then grew right back up into the moving ice. It was like it was alive. Scratch that. I could feel it like it was alive. The air pulsed cold from the window, as if the ice had given it a heartbeat. I backed out of the room slowly and went back to the safety of my bed. I was warm in there. Was safe from whatever it was that was outside. I waited until this morning to check on it. I waited until that pale sun was up in the sky to look out there. The frost was gone, and somehow that was worse than seeing it there in the first place. Check the weather, the news, whatever and wherever someone might have been awake to document it. Any Googling I did sent me to creeping ice, which was a lake effect ice thing. I know what that is. I've seen that. I live 20 miles from Lake Michigan. Feel free to search it yourself. Because it looks about right, but it's also nothing like what I saw. There was nothing. In fact, last night was supposed to be 34 degrees and frost might have formed. But there was no way ice would have held around, least of all multiplied itself in front of my eyes. I have to go to work today, and I'm dreading leaving my apartment. Not because I'm cold, not because I'm scared, which for the record I'm very freaked out, but because something feels even more wrong today. Something about how bright it is, and how nice out it looks makes me think I'm in for something horrible. But we'll see. Maybe I'm just making a big deal out of nothing. I'll let you guys know if anything else happens.